251st Contact. Friday, February 3, 1995, 12:01 a.m. Edward. My friend, it is so nice to see you again. Welcome to my lair. Ptah. I too am delighted to greet you again, Edward, my friend. I am to convey warm greetings and wishes from everyone, especially from all those people you know, but also from some you have not even met. Edward. Thank you. I do hope I will keep hearing from them occasionally, and from you as well, of course. Now the year of 1995 has begun, and with it, the time of finishing your tasks here on Earth. Ptah. That is correct. However, it does not mean we will also end our contacts with you. Our intention is to continue them, although much less frequently. Therefore, it may take many months, or perhaps even a year or two, before one of us can visit you again. Edward. I am certainly pleased about that, because I would really miss all of you very much, especially you, since you have practically been the only one in the past few years who visits me. But tell me, when are you and your people withdrawing all of your crews and materials from the planet Earth? Ptah. We have already completed that task, and there is nothing on Earth now that points to our previous existence here, with the exception of the materials you have. The last of our people left the planet Earth approximately 30 minutes ago. Our stations on the Earth no longer exist either, and everything has been restored to the way it originally was, with absolutely no trace of our stay on Earth. Edward. Of course, you had to do this, that is clear. A long time ago Sfath already told me, along with Asket, Semyasi and Quetzal, that you and your people would have to do this once the year 1995 had begun. You, too, told me the same, and I had to keep silent until the time when you would all withdraw from the Earth for good. I am familiar with the reasons for your withdrawal, however, I do not know whether I am allowed to speak of it officially, because you told me that it would have to remain a secret for the time being, at least until 1995, when you were all to leave the planet Earth. Ptah. You must continue to keep the secret, and do not speak about it under any circumstances. We are not permitted to elaborate on it either, as our withdrawal from Earth is linked with the immediate future and related events, in which we are not allowed to interfere in any form, so that we may protect and keep close reins on the secret, regarding our own culture and region where we live. This is tied in also with the fact that some matters are impending. On one hand, we were able to foresee them, but on the other hand, they are the reason for our withdrawal, while events that have been unfolding on Earth for several decades, now were part of our assignments. We have fulfilled these tasks, along with the many others we were obligated to look after, and you have played a very important role in this scenario of making public the so-called UFO phenomena, as the people on Earth often call it. You alone made it possible to promulgate this subject matter everywhere on the Earth, and provoke the controversy to the extent that it is not only religious and pseudo-esoteric sectarians, fanatics, gullible men and women, insane people, etc., who preoccupy themselves with the subject. Finally, for some time now, a great variety of scientists, governmental agencies, military services and governments have also begun to seriously preoccupy themselves with this subject, a fact that could not have been accomplished without your help and great resulting effort. Actually, alone through your efforts, was the successful launching of the UFO controversy on the Earth possible, for which we all express our appreciation to you, a recognition you had to really struggle for, when I think of all the harm that has come crashing down upon you. It is completely irrelevant whether they were health-related, or associated with the defamations, abuse of language, assassination attempts, diatribes of hatred, and a few other things. Had it not been for these occurrences, the UFO controversy would never have come about, and scientists, as well as various military and government agencies, among others, would not have become seriously interested in it. In your defense, I am permitted today to speak officially about these matters, and the fact that we used special techniques to analyze and evaluate in great detail the movie and photo montages, along with the movie trick photography used by the many bogus and deceitful, purported contactees or UFO observers. We found that their falsified movies and photographs appeal to the people on Earth, particularly to the so-called UFO experts, who often call themselves ufologists and the like, and this even includes some well-respected scientists. The absurdity of the falsifications, and the people who believe them is stunning and extremely effective. For this reason, we executed maneuvers with our genuinely existing spaceships, for example, jerky pendulum movements, and certain skipping and floating movements, which ordinarily are not a part of our spaceship's normal movements and flight techniques. Instead, they appeared like those ridiculous, abrupt pendulum and strange swaying movements of the manipulated movies and photos by many UFO swindlers, liars and charlatans. The fact that we chose to execute these movement types is based on the reasoning that they, in particular, would result in a fierce UFO controversy everywhere on the Earth, which resulted in many hardships for you, of course. You were often accused of fraud, deceit, charlatanry, and indeed, dishonesty. You were often further charged with constructing models, and then photographing and filming them. Often we felt very sorry for you, but were unable to change any of this. Only by executing these flight maneuvers, which you then were able to film, photograph and disseminate everywhere on the planet Earth, was the UFO controversy ensured, which led to the previously mentioned outcomes. In the future, they will also bring about additional, and by now urgently needed results. It may be some consolation to know that everything has occurred with the desired and intended outcome, and that you are now the most important man on Earth, in matters related to contacts with people of other star systems and UFO affairs, and you probably are the most famous man on Earth in these matters. Of C. Edward. Excuse me, but I am not conceited because of it, and can easily do without that. Pitah. Your words and resistance were probably inevitable, however, they do show that you really have not changed. However, I am not finished speaking. It was inevitable, of course, that people would appear, who were extremely jealous of you, and others who defrauded and adulterated your films and photographs, because they wanted to make you look preposterous, and destroy your work. Therefore, they sought to obtain your original films and negatives, which was not particularly difficult to do, because of your trusting attitude. Subsequently, some of this material was copied and recopied over and over, and also adulterated through composites and other manipulations, to the point where the appearance of trick photography and photo montages was evoked. These malicious men and women used movie footage and photo negatives, that had been retouched or marked with lines, in order to give the impression there were threads, ropes, wires or other such suspension accessories. Then these movies and photos were disseminated everywhere on Earth, while you had been handed back falsified original films and original negatives, without you ever having been suspicious or wary, since you fully trusted those who came to cheat and slander you. However, even in the early beginnings of your work, there did exist people who honestly trusted you, and knew you were neither a swindler nor a fraud, and that you were honest through and through. These men and women also viewed your movies and photos, recognized the genuineness of the material and your own truthfulness, were not dissuaded, and greatly supported you. Among them, were those who also suspected that certain movie footage and photos were manipulated and even falsified by malicious people, or that, for very specific reasons, such things as the strange flight maneuvers of our spaceships, had been deliberately performed to generate doubt, and this worldwide UFO controversy. They realized that the strange swaying motion, and jerky pendulum movements of our spaceships, which you filmed and photographed, were intentionally produced, in order to trigger a particular response within the people on Earth's thinking process. These men and women accepted this fact, and refrained from allowing themselves to be influenced by defamatory gripers and other malicious people. Instead, they stayed by you, or within the close or extended circle of your group, acquaintances and friends. Edward. Well, that is how it was, and I thank everyone who always trusted me. However, now it is probably time to thoroughly speak of all those matters you and your people had not allowed me to talk about, until your withdrawal was complete. Pitah. Of course, you may speak about them now, because the time has come for us to withdraw as planned. New things manifest themselves for the people on Earth, and a new era ensues, toward which you and we have done so much to ensure that everything transpires as intended. Above all, it was you who flattened the most important paths, and together we have performed and executed our duties. This at least fulfills our tasks, while yours are still ongoing. Edward. I hope to be able to fulfill my tasks as well. Ptah. I have no doubts about that. Edward. Usually, I do not give in to doubt, however, one never knows what may happen unexpectedly. Ptah. That is correct, of course. Edward. Precisely. Have you studied the 23 typed pages, which you picked up 3 days ago and brought back yesterday? This is actually what I wanted to discuss with you, whether or not it may be talked about now. In my opinion, there should not be any objection to this, because you and your people are no longer active on the earth. Oh yes, what about your activity as Ishwish on the earth, or is this redundant, now that you have completed your tasks? Ptah. Certainly, for I must turn to other assignments now. Edward. Too bad, so the earth is without an Ishwish now. Ptah. That is not quite correct, for there still exists reincarnations of old gods, who will make themselves heard. However, I am only allowed to report about this to you confidentially, if you are interested. Edward. By all means, let us discuss it after our official meeting. Ptah. So it will be. Edward. Now let us get back to my 23 pages, is everything correct then? Ptah. I did not notice any errors, other than typing mistakes. However, one thing that was not quite correct, was the chronological order of events. I presumed you did this for a purpose, so that no specific years or other calculations of time could be gleaned from the data. I for one, find this very sensible. Also, in some places you have repeated yourself, for example, when you advanced the time of an event, and repeated it at the proper place. Edward. Yes, I am aware of that. Ptah. Other than this, I did not notice anything incorrect. Edward. That is good. Later, when I record this contact, I will add the 23 pages to the text of our conversation. Ptah. That is entirely your decision. Edward. Good. Edward Albert Myers 23 pages. Edward. This information should suffice for now, and no special explanations are needed. Further discussion about the actual years would be a moot point in any event, because I consider any mention of the exact timing of these events completely out of place. An interesting item for the group, and for everyone else, may be that certain points pertaining to the people of other star systems visits, had been off-limit for discussion for several years, except for those items your people, you in particular, had already mentioned. You had already told me that I could openly speak about them upon your withdrawal from the earth. Ptah. That is correct. We spoke only of those ancestors, who have played an important role up to the present, that is, the 3 groups of men and women we previously discussed, in one of our last conversations. In addition to these groups, there still exists a few other groups of people of various star systems, who visit the planet Earth, and are observed relatively frequently. However, none of these groups of people maintain any form of contact with anyone on Earth, not of a private, military or governmental nature. Some visit the Earth strictly for excursion or expedition purposes, while others maintain different interests. However, not one of these groups has any type of contact, especially as it is presented by hysterical people in the United States, whereby they often claim that women on Earth are impregnated by men of other star systems, or where men on Earth impregnate women of another star system. Furthermore, you may forget the nonsense about the massacre of animals, etc., etc. Such matters have no factual basis. However, people of other star systems will create a big flurry on the planet Earth in the future, when their interests concern other matters besides excursions or expeditions. However, we are not allowed to speak about the reasons, and neither are you of course, because you know about many of these future events. Edward. Naturally, but I still have a question. Is it not possible that some things you have just mentioned may be responsible for the claims made by Ed Walters in the United States, who also offers photographs? Ptah. He is a swindler and a fraud, and his photos are completely counterfeit. This is an established fact. Edward. Good, thanks, but why were we not allowed to mention those people of another star system, of which you just spoke of? Ptah. On one hand, this is related to upcoming events, and a new era on the planet Earth. However, we are not permitted to speak about such things, as I have previously explained. On the other hand, unfortunately, careless leaks of this information would only lead to further hysteria, lies and fraud, along with deceit and charlatanry, as has been the case already in the United States, Germany, England, Japan, Sweden and many other places. Edward. Yes, I know, and in this regard, MUFON especially leads the way in hysteria and idiocy. Ptah. That is correct, however, MUFON alone must not be blamed for this hysteria. Many religious sects, and in particular, the government itself, must share in the blame. In fact, the latter hides a great deal of important evidence regarding the existence of people from other star systems, and the appearances on Earth by these men and women, within their secret and undercover files. Indeed, the government prohibits by law contacts of people on Earth with men and women of other star systems. Another very distressing factor is the fact that the United States military often constructs and tests flying objects with extreme secrecy. However, many outsiders are knowledgeable about these events, and even hold evidence of these activities, simply because they were able to observe, film and photograph them at an opportune time. Edward. And these flying objects have shapes that are unlike that of any airplane, and they utilize propulsion systems and technological flight characteristics that traditional aircraft do not have. However, why are you speaking about these things now? We were not allowed to mention them before. Ptah. With our withdrawal, the cloak of secrecy has been removed from us as well. Therefore, I am now permitted to speak about the various so-called UFO sightings that were observed in many countries on Earth over the past decades. Frequently, they may be traced back to the flying objects of the people on Earth. They do not belong only to the United States, but to other countries on Earth as well. The real reason why we are allowed to speak now, after our current withdrawal, is the fact that for some time now, all of these things were open secrets in certain circles. Therefore, we are not divulging anything that is considered a secret in the near future, as is the case with actual government and military secrets, in which case we have neither permission to intervene, nor may we currently reveal them. At this time, we are confirming certain things and events that have not been considered actual secrets for quite some time. Edward. In a number of countries on Earth, flying objects are being developed that successfully resemble spaceships of other star systems, due to their strange and unusual construction. The styles of these flying devices range from the saucer-like spaceships your people made known, all the way to triangular shapes, among many others. Therefore, it is no wonder that many people on Earth regard these flying objects as UFOs, or rather, as spaceships, or simply as flying craft of other star systems, and also because these craft are silent, or nearly silent, and display flying characteristics that are completely different than the flight techniques commonly known on Earth. Now you have a repetition of your explanations. A double stitching holds up much better. Ptah. That is correct. Edward. In my 23 pages, I forgot to also mention that the people on Earth were actually one single lineage during Enoch's ancient times, and from this one lineage, other lineages formed, due to climatic and atmospheric changes and emigrations, that created new lineages once again. These lineages then mixed among themselves, and new lineages were created once again. Over the course of time, not only did the skin color of the people change, but also their outward appearance, however, always in tune with the new surroundings, new living conditions, and other influences. This, of course, resulted in genetic changes, in addition to those changes produced by the genetic manipulations. However, the changes were not significant enough for the original and basic link not to remain evident, that the people on Earth originated from the same, singular lineage. Therefore, when the people from the Lyra regions and other locations procreated with the early immigrants, respectively, their descendants nearly 190,000 years ago on Earth, the cycle was complete among people of the same lineage. And when the men and women separated again in large spurts, the most diverse regions of the earth were newly inhabited, and further changes in skin color, outward appearance and genes transpired again. This time too, the Ur lineage remained intact, and it can be genetically proven that the people on Earth originated from a single Ur lineage. Ptah. Indeed, you actually did fail to mention this in your report. Edward. Something else in this regard, I have been thinking that we could also incorporate the 23 pages within the prophecies. There are actually only 1 or 2 real prophecies, the remainder consists of predictions, which may be changed through the people on Earth's thoughts and actions. How do you feel about this? Ptah. It would probably be appropriate for you to integrate everything together into your new book. Edward. Certain men and women are probably going to get into a flap over it for sure, however, this does not really matter. We are used to such things, because anyone who wishes to be heard, must create a disturbance, and whoever wishes to create a disturbance, must repeat the same thing several times. Only by creating a disturbance, will the people on Earth become aware of someone or some facts presented to them, because they will either feel attacked, or because it bothers them to hear the same facts 2 or 3 times. It is the only way to stimulate the people on Earth into thinking, regardless of whether it is in a peaceful or angry way. The only important thing is the result, that is to say, the fact that one way or another they feel attacked, and therefore, only then do they begin to think about these things and react. However, now something else. Recently, I stumbled across the fact that we spoke against hatred towards strangers and other lineages in our small campaign texts, but we have never really delved into the subject, or produced any separate booklets on it. In the future, we will do so, and together with Bernadette, I have designed stickers for this subject matter. Here they are. What do you think of them? These are already at the printers. These 3 I would like to have made up next week. Ptah. They are very nice, and express a great deal about the subject matter. I like them very much, and would be delighted if you gave me 3 of each one, and of those you now have as well. I would like to begin a collection of them. Quetzal still has some Swiss money remaining, from the time you purchased various items for us. I would like to give you this money, as a contribution toward the printing costs of these stickers, because it must be nearly 500.00 Swiss franc. Edward. Of course, you may have as many stickers as you wish, and the money we certainly like to have too. I thank you on behalf of the entire group. Ptah. Please convey my thanks and greetings to the group members also, and to all of the groups in California, Sweden, Toronto, Japan, and of course, to all friends of the truth, and all passive group members as well. I also pass on these thanks and greetings of behalf of my daughters Semyasi and Pleja, and also Askit, Nira, Manara, Isotos, Talita, Quetzal and all the others who know you from photos and our TV broadcasts, or from those men and women who encountered core group and passive group members, during our visits to the center. However, these people only very rarely noticed we were nearby. I have also been asked to convey many thanks and greetings, from those who know you only from what others have told them. Edward. Thank you. Ptah. It is, Edward. Please, the, Ptah. This is correct. I also wanted to talk about that, however, if you feel that matters really are as you have just mentioned, it may be better to keep silent about it. Edward. They are probably just as you said, however, let us talk about something else. For some time now, the magazines and newspapers have been filled with war crime recollections by the Nazis in Germany. Radio and television also have nothing better to do than to fan the memories of these crimes with every means possible. The Jewish organizations and associations, etc., do so especially. It is my opinion that these actions are just as abominable and criminal as all anti-war propaganda, in the form of so-called anti-war films, etc., as well as the magnified crimes of racism and torture. It is my private opinion, which is based on my knowledge of the psychological reactions of the people on Earth, that all of those who shout anti and contra against torture and capital punishment, concentration camps, crime, and wars in any form, by showing these gruesome and horrifying pictures shown in newspapers, magazines, as well as on TV and in the cinemas, of men and women getting massacred, tortured and murdered, cemeteries being violated, and houses being burned, among many other things, are doing others a great disservice. They have no clue about the psyche and psychology of the people on earth. If they knew anything about this, they would realize that their actions achieve exactly the opposite to what they intend, because numerous misled erroneous thinking men and women feel attracted to such purported anti-propaganda. These people see this idiotic anti-propaganda, and are then often triggered toward the opposite effect, and want to act in the manner they are shown. For this reason, the neo-Nazi and right extremist movements gain ever more ground. Unfortunately, this is an embedded psychological process, which is really not recognized by those in charge, and by all supporters of this insane anti-propaganda. Indeed, these men and women lack knowledge regarding the nature of the people on earth, and the understanding of their psychology. Anti-war films, anti-concentration camp films, anti-drug films, anti-torture and anti-capital punishment films, that depict crimes using photographs, descriptions, and movies, that present such crimes, by stimulating the reader's fantasy, achieve exactly the opposite of what they intend. Memories triggered by such moronic things, provoke in many people on earth, the desire to act in the same way as the culprits, who originally performed these atrocities, and who also had become insane through propaganda themselves. Anyone wanting to speak up against these past and still prevailing horrors, must never do so in such a moronic manner. Condemnation must occur by pointing out the current existing atrocities, and their ominous consequences for the future. Memories of past events, in accordance with the idiotic motto, "We must never forget Auschwitz," or "We must never let the horrors of the past be forgotten," etc., are completely out of place and extremely dangerous, because they often only prompt identical horrors. Therefore, this insanity must stop, if the flames of neo-Nazi and extreme radicalism are not to be fanned any further. Only by banning the anti-insanity, in the above-mentioned form, can healing begin. And a fight against all of this harm will only be crowned with success, if the means to fight are restricted to those methods that do not glorify the memories, as it has been the case until now. Instead, the methods must delineate them in a form that points out the damage and harm, and reveals the subsequent consequences they will result in. This is my private opinion, and I would like to hear yours too at this time. Pitah. I completely agree with you, and no further explanations are needed, except possibly, that only responsible, clear-thinking and rational men and women will recognize this fact. One does not even require any psychological education, and pure reason alone is enough to identify the validity of your explanation. Edward. Of course, but please tell me. In the middle of February, a severe earthquake occurred in Japan, which caused more than 5,000 deaths and immense damage. It was far, far more severe than the last major tremor in California, during which a great deal of plundering took place, and the people there behaved as though they had never had any decency and respect. This also has happened in other places, in Mexico for instance, several South American countries and elsewhere, where all law and order collapsed. All of this stands in direct contrast with Japan, where such things almost never happen, and the people there deal with all hardships admirably composed. Chaos and all other ills did not materialize, the way they did in other countries, especially in the United States, where appropriate demeanor would have also been warranted. This appropriate demeanor was lacking, as was a certain kind of culture. Indeed, even Japanese organized crime groups aided the people, with food distribution and other things. This alone shows real culture and honor, and what composure and respect the Japanese have. Chivalry and friendship are not simply empty words with them, the way it often is with many people in the United States, who say you are their friend very quickly, and yet, their word has no substance for them, as we have so often seen over the past 20 years. Still, there are obviously also those people of America, who are real and honest friends. To them, friendship is a very precious thing. I too, have such friends of America, but unfortunately, they are very few in number. However, they are real, honest and loyal friends. Pitah. I am aware this, the earthquake spread great suffering, misery, sadness and vast destruction throughout Japan, and among the Japanese people. Please convey to them our greatest respect for their admirable conduct during those difficult times. Edward. I'd be glad to, for I also feel a sense of high esteem and respect for them. Can any action at all be taken against earthquakes? Pitta. Experience has shown that even on every one of our inhabited planets within the Federation, that hardly anything reasonable can be done to prevent severe quake damage, once tall buildings, etc., have been constructed. For this reason, we normally only have low, greatly reinforced buildings, capable of withstanding the most severe earthquakes. Our inhabited planets are also shaken by earthquakes, but our construction methods for buildings, and their safety against planetary jolts, are designed accordingly. Edward. You also have houses and buildings that are not constructed from small pieces, that is, made from stone or cement blocks and so forth, since your buildings are made as single units from synthetic materials. There is not a single seam anywhere, judging from what I have seen. Furthermore, they are constructed on systems of springs, or as floating bodies. Pitta. That is correct, but these are merely two of the methods utilized, in order to offset any jolting. Edward. I did not claim that I knew everything, and only mentioned what I had observed during my visit. Besides, the earthquake was not the only alarming event on Earth in January. Throughout Europe, including Switzerland, monstrous storms and floods have caused incredible damage. Pitta. This will also be the case from now on, because these disasters will increase worldwide even further, and so will storms, tornadoes, typhoons, hurricanes, floods, droughts and huge wildfires everywhere, that will cause immense damage and many deaths on Earth. Earthquakes are also among these calamities, that will cause even further damage and suffering, as will also be the case with wars and religious sectarianism, which is expected to initiate many sectarian dramas. Major and minor criminal activities will abound all over the planet Earth, as will political and military turmoil. Islamic fundamentalism will also become more extreme, as well as diseases and epidemics increasing among the people on Earth. Of course, these crises will not take place at constantly high levels, for these things tend sometimes to increase or to decrease, therefore, at various periods, the calamities will be more numerous and sometimes less so. However, they will continuously increase, and the blame for this upward trend must be placed with the people on Earth, because through the constant increases in overpopulation, they compound and increase every form of misfortune. However, we really should not spend more time speaking about these matters, because throughout the many years of our contacts, everything of relevance has been discussed previously. The people on Earth as a whole, especially those with responsible positions in governments and the military, often chose to ignore the population figures, although you and your entire group have made every effort, and have expended much energy and cost, in order to publicize this information. Edward. We do have some successes to show for it, because many people have picked up on our words and passed them on, along with their efforts to begin living and behaving according to our statements and suggestions. Pitta. That is correct, of course, but I was speaking about the majority of the people on Earth, and the majority of the responsible few. Naturally, the minority is also important, because it is these men and women, who lead in spreading the truth with great fervor. Unfortunately, they will often reap very little gratitude, even though they will ultimately be responsible for laying the cornerstone of positive change, and in this regard, you and your group are in the most important position. Edward. Thank you for the flowers. Pitta. Now that we have withdrawn from Earth, I want to reiterate the issue, once again, that neither we Pleiadians, nor any of the allies within our Federation, are maintaining any contacts whatsoever with the people on Earth, neither in a physical or telepathic form. Indeed, such contacts have never existed, except however, for 5 particular people, whose identity you already know, and who died several years ago. Not one of them ever publicized the knowledge they had. However, what we want to say, is that we do maintain impulse contacts with various scientists on Earth and others as well. We will also continue these contacts through the appropriate devices, although the people involved have not, nor will they likely ever know about the contacts in the future. These impulse contacts are determined by evolution, and are guiding the people on Earth towards the future, whereupon research and inventions will transpire, new knowledge will be gleaned, literary works of a futuristic form will be written, as well as some science fiction, that will frequently be turned into motion pictures. You are the only man on Earth, with whom we had and still maintain contact with, in both physical and telepathic form, except for those 5 people whom you knew, and who have since died. Edward. What about other men and women of other star systems since? Do any of them maintain contacts with the people on Earth at this time? I mean with private men and women and the like, who have no connections with governments and the military, about which you are not permitted to speak. Ptah. This question must be answered with a definite no, because none of the 3 lineages of people, who are constantly or frequently on Earth, maintain any private, religious or another kind of contacts with people on Earth, which can also be affirmed with absolute certainty. This also applies to the many lineages of people, who visit the planet Earth for excursions, expeditions or whatever other reasons. The examination contacts are excluded, and we are not speaking about them, since they are not considered two-way contacts. Edward. This means then, that no contacts now exist between men and women on Earth, and people of other star systems, and just as you have stated, neither are there any contacts of a religion's nature between the people on Earth, and people of other star systems. And this also means, that the stigmatized man and his benefactor, Siragusa, are nothing more than frauds. The man of the stigmata, Giorgio Bongiovanni, even wanted to come and bring me a very important message from the Holy Mother of God, and the Father in Heaven himself. For nearly a week he had third parties pester us in a number of languages, in order to arrange a meeting with me. He and his followers actually believe his stigmata is a sign from God, while his signs, and those of all stigmatic men and women, are really only generated by religious sectarian delusions and fanaticism. These signs are produced through a religious and sectarian-based psychogenic effect, in the identical manner as was the case with the first famous stigmatic man, Francis of Assisi, and several hundred others. Ptah. This is absolutely correct, and from our monitoring devices, I know about the incident regarding the telephone harassment by the followers of this delusional fanatic, Giorgio Bongiovanni. It seems, the religious sectarian fanaticism knows no bounds among the people on Earth. Edward. Another question regarding the Pleiades. You have mentioned previously, that they are still very young. Are there not any inhabitable planets? Ptah. No, although there is a planetary formation around some of the Pleiadian celestial bodies, they are in as young a state as the stars themselves, which is only natural of course. When the stars are young, the planets must also be young. However, on the few planets in the Pleiades star cluster, no life exists on them at this time, and the question remains whether or not any life will ever develop there. Edward. Thank you, and now another question. For the book Secret Matter UFO, by Michael Hussman, he used a cover photo taken by a certain Amaury Rivera, that shows an American Air Force F-14 interceptor and a UFO over Puerto Rico. Do you know anything about this? Ptah. Certainly, there is no doubt that trick photography was done with models suspended using fishing lines. We have checked into this matter, as thoroughly as we have also with Ed Walters, whose photos also utilize trick photography. Michael Hussman is an enthusiastic ufologist, but he is in this respect, extremely, almost irresponsibly, gullible. And allows himself to be unusually easily tricked and deceived, and he erroneously believes he is from another star system. However, as our very thorough investigations have revealed, he is a purely Earth-originating man, and this may in part, be the reason for his UFO enthusiasm, and the fact he is so easily deceived. Edward. Regarding the falsified photos, there have been many other authentic pictures taken in the past few years by UFO observers. Among them, according to your own information, there are also photos taken by police and military personnel. Ptah. That is correct. A number of people from other star systems have allowed their spaceships to be sighted, filmed and photographed on Earth over the past decades. The UFO movie footage and photographic material produced all over the planet Earth, but especially in the United States, South America, England and other countries, does not always show actual spaceships of other star systems. Instead, the photos also depict exotic aircraft that have been produced by the people on Earth over the past several decades, as well as ships that come from the Earth's future, or those which are known to us as bioorganic flying devices. Edward Carlos Diaz is a purported contactee. What do you think of him? Pitah. You pose an redundant question, for I have already explained that no man or woman on Earth maintains any contacts with people of other star systems, therefore, he is a liar and a fraud. Edward. I would like to ask for additional information about the following. Are you familiar with Area 51, Roswell? The 1947 incident in New Mexico. A UFO crash in Aztec, New Mexico, similar to the one in Roswell, but a year later. A third crash at the Mexican border in the year of 1949 or 1950. And in addition, do the people of the United States in Area 51 have some corpses of another star system, along with one whom they hold captive, and who may still be alive? Pitah. I have already stated several times that these matters fall under my pledge of secrecy, because they are associated with government, military and national security affairs. Therefore, I am not permitted to speak about these issues officially, but I may speak to you in confidence, under four eyes, as you like to refer to it. Needless to say, it would indeed present a danger to you, if you officially revealed such information, therefore, let us keep things the way they are now. Edward. That is all right, it was only a last attempt. Then back to Michael Hussman, what do you think of him? Pitah. He would be a very valuable man in disseminating the truth, if only he would stop being influenced to such a great extent by lies, deceit, fraud and charlatanry, and if he were more courageous in disseminating the genuine truth, instead of so much nonsense that is presented in his books and magazine. Edward. You are expressing my opinion as well. Pitah. He could be a man given the required trust, in order to disseminate the truth, if only he would acquire the courage to commit himself to it. Edward. I know, but unfortunately, this essential factor does not seem to exist. What about future contacts with men and women of other star systems? May we speak about them now? Pitah. Unfortunately, this remains impossible. However, I am, or rather, you are permitted to reveal that new events will soon occur. Edward. You mean the fact that the time is fast approaching when official contacts with people of other star systems will begin to take place? Pitah. Of course, I have told you about them, and in the near future, many things and changes will occur, in regards to spaceships of other star systems, their crews, as well as mysterious and exotic-looking flying craft of the people on Earth. Contacts with people of other star systems may be expected, however, they will be completely different from the current contacts that these many lying, deceitful and fraudulent would-be contactees claim to have experienced, due to their religious sectarian absurdities, among other things. Immensely significant new discoveries are also soon coming, that will take place on the planet Earth, its moon, Mars and beyond, as you have previously stated, and extensively revealed in your 23-page report, without mentioning the specific times of particular events. Edward. It would have had negative consequences to name the years or exact days, months and so forth. Pitah. I have already stated that you have acted correctly, and regarding this correctness, I would like to point out something that is not particularly pleasant. After observing what has been going on over the past few years, I have noticed that only a small number of core group members have sufficient capabilities to write in such a manner that they can produce texts and books through their own volition and ability. This is particularly apparent among the men of the group, excluding Guido. The situation with various women group members is much more positive. In regards to current writings and upcoming books, I find the required labor-intensive corrections and revisions absolutely alarming, and this applies also to the required sentence structure, in order to achieve the appropriate wording. Edward. The core group members simply are not writers, and often do not have the ability to write well at all. Pitah. There are at least 3 men group members, who are convinced that their literary effusions are of unique quality. However, if their works were to be published, they would require complete re-editing, proofreading, and revising, so they would be both stylistically correct and readable. Edward: That is a fine mess, but tell me, from where do you know the term Korrekturen? Ptah: This is a very old, long-gone term in Old German, that means something is or must be put right again. Edward: I know of this word too, my friend, and I use it all the time. Ptah: It is a word that briefly and concisely expresses the proper meaning. Edward: I am pleased that I am not the only one who knows and uses it, because it seems that nobody really knows of it anymore. Even in academic books, I cannot find anything about it, as though it had never existed. Ptah: It is shown in our old German language records. Edward: Well, this will not help me here on earth, however, our great authors will certainly be relieved by your words. Ptah: It would be pointless not to speak about this fact, because the errors would never be recognized. On the other hand, I would be lying if I praised the core group members, and such actions are foreign to us. The written works produced in the mentioned manner really cannot be published, until they have been thoroughly re-edited. Edward: And who is to do all this re-editing? Ptah: Probably you will not find the time, although you are the most likely candidate, and yet, perhaps you should not be considered for this task. I would like to suggest that Marianne does it, if she is willing, but it would take up much of her time, and would also greatly restrict her freedom. Although a few women members in the core group could also perform this task, however, they too have very little spare time. Therefore, we must drop this subject for now, and see what can be done about it in the future. Edward: Some prospects. Please tell me now, how far your research and tests have progressed, regarding the latest travel and transportation technology. Ptah: Everything remains hampered by failures, and it will still take more time before all the functions perform flawlessly. Some additional, unexpected problems arose again recently. Once everything is functioning without defect, we will have the capability of visiting you more often, as we will not need to travel the distances to Earth and you in such an awkward manner. Instead, we will do so without losing any time at all. Among other things, also, we have not forgotten your trip to visit my daughter Semyasi. Edward: I am happy to hear this, and am eager to find out when this will finally take place. Ptah: As it looks now, it may still need some time, perhaps 2 or 3 years. Edward: Man, oh man, I am already old and rickety now. One more question regarding UFOs of the people on Earth. You told me that you are not allowed to discuss them, however, there are many people on Earth, who openly speak about them, and can even present photographic and movie footage evidence of these ships. Even insiders now speak openly of these matters, divulging many secrets. Ptah: That may be so, however, they are not in my position, and I must adhere to our directives, which state that I cannot speak about such matters. We are prohibited from interfering with any matters on the Earth, other than those where we are in direct contact with you, and are providing you with information, among other things. Edward: Of course, I should have thought of this myself. Oh yes, what are we going to do now in the future, when I have questions for which I would like an answer from you? Ptah: We have already taken care of everything, so when something important arises, we will be able to contact you telepathically. You will not need to try very much to reach us, because the monitoring device that will remain over the center, is adjusted and programmed to receive your telepathic impulses, which are transmitted as a signal to me at several times the speed of light. I will then contact you. Likewise, I will get in contact with you when I have important information, instructions or other matters for you or the group. Therefore, you need not struggle to call me, in other words, you need not try for hours, if I am not available at that exact moment. A simple elementary type telepathic call will suffice, and will be registered by the monitoring device, whose signal is continually transmitted, until I receive and confirm it. My telepathic contact with you, in turn, will ensue as rapidly as possible, using normal spirit telepathy. Edward. Thank you for your efforts, and I will only call you when something really important turns up. Ptah. I would be much obliged. Furthermore, please refrain from asking questions that concern the interests of group members, or anyone else in particular. In the future, the intent is that all of you are on your own, which means you all must determine, guide and handle everything by yourselves. Future questions will only be answered when they are closely or loosely related to interests regarding the truth, and those generated in some form by your own interests. Edward. What about the remote-controlled discs that were monitoring the planet Earth? Will they remain stationed where they are? Ptah. All of the monitoring devices have been removed now, and the only remaining ones are intended for the center. It is a single device no larger than 7 mm in diameter, and 3.2 mm in thickness. Edward. And this contains the entire monitoring electronics, and the signal transmitters? Ptah. Along with many other things, of which you could not even dream, as you sometimes express it. The monitoring device also contains the transmitter, receiver and a related picture transmission system, that transmits everything at a multiple of the speed of light, to a checkpoint near to our physical location at the star within the Pleiades star cluster. From there, it reaches us by way of a time-shifting transmitter, with the receiver located in our own space-time configuration, and therefore, in our time-shifted configuration. However, for security reasons, I am not allowed to provide any further explanations. Edward. You are probably referring to security, regarding other space-traveling men and women? Ptah. Precisely, and to provide you with more detailed information could be dangerous for us. Edward. My friend, you are once again very vague. You probably feel that certain people of other star systems beyond the Sol system could obtain your information from me, and find their way to one of your home planets? Ptah. Yes, that is what I am telling you. We know of at least one such group of men and women, who are capable of entering into hyperspace, to the extent that they would be capable of penetrating into our time-shifted configuration, which would be rather unpleasant. Edward. I did not know that. Do these people visit Earth too? Ptah. Yes, they do. Edward. Then I understand your concerns even more. Are you speaking of those who, Ptah? They only visit Earth sporadically. Edward. In the Lessons of the Spirit, I have started an extensive project on dream interpretation, and have already explained that dream symbols throughout the universe have the identical value, respectively, interpretation for all men and women, presuming of course, that the people of other star systems have the same symbols as the people on Earth. However, this is not always the case, naturally, because many other prerequisites exist on other inhabited planets, such as the animals, technology, landscapes, etc., which often determine many symbols. If we presume then, that on other habitable planets ravens exist too, or snakes and so forth, they would have the same symbolic value as on the planet Earth. Stars, fire, water, air, volcanoes and thousands of other things exist throughout the universe. As dream symbols, they have the same values and interpretations as those on Earth. Symbols on other star systems that are non-existent on Earth, due to different types of fauna, environment, technology, music, landscapes, flora, etc., that exist on other habitable planets, would have the identical values on Earth or elsewhere, as long as the appropriate prerequisites are given on Earth as well. Does this apply to other universes also? I think that it cannot be any other way. Ptah. You are absolutely correct. Edward. Then I have another question regarding, one never knows. So many unexpected things seem to happen all the time, and they could change everything. Ptah. That is correct of course, and we cannot say what the future will hold in this regard. However, just like you, we also hope that everything will unfold accordingly. Edward. That is easy to say, but we really are hoping for it too. By the way, Heidi and Bob in San Diego, California, as well as the many group members who gather around them, are always very active, diligent and successful. A real joy. Pitta. I am well aware of their situation, therefore, please give them my special greetings and high respect, because they are very diligent and successful in their efforts for the truth. They are a rare exception in the United States, in regards to their honesty, along with their efforts and respect for the truth, you and us. When I think of the terrible schemes, fraudulent activities and exploitations perpetrated by the people in the United States against you, I permit myself to say that the men and women in this small group around Adelheid, respectively Heidi and Bob, as well as these two themselves, belong to a very select group of people, whom you would have to search a long, long time to find. How did you phrase it once? Some very few, healthy, germinating seeds in a gigantic desert. A phrase I have since never forgotten. Edward. I did say this once, that is correct. It was a very long time ago, but it also applies to Heidi and Bob, and the small group gathered around them. The Toronto group, Fig Japan and the few people in Sweden, are also doing quite well, even though in Canada and Japan, a few small snags still remain. However, there is not yet a comparison with Heidi and Bob's group. Pitta. We all give them our greatest respect. Edward. You have said it, my friend. However, I wanted to ask you still about the future meditations. If you are not visiting the planet Earth any longer, does this mean you are not participating in the meditations either? Pitta. No, everything remains the same way as it has been until now. There will be no changes in this regard, and everything will continue the way it always has. Edward. That is good, so we are not really alone. May I still ask something, in regards to the epidemics that threaten many people on Earth? Pitta. Present your question. Edward. You did mention that new epidemics will also manifest themselves, and begin to spread everywhere on Earth. When will this begin? Pitta. These things began originally with the initial epidemics, when as usual, everything was kept covered up. Edward. How could it be any different? Our glorious scientists also often claim that certain diseases cannot cross over the species barriers, such as epidemics, for example, of scurvy, also called cattle madness or BSE, and AIDS. In both cases, this has already happened, in fact, a long time ago, yet many narrow-minded, megalomaniac, moronic scientists still often claim this is impossible. Pitta. That is absolutely correct. Pathogens of animals, as well as people, are very much capable of crossing over the species barrier, mutating, and causing the infection of other species with the same disease. Pathogens have the ability to spread from one type of animal to other animal species and to people, while likewise, pathogens and diseases of people have the ability to spread to animals, and due to the change from one species to another, the characteristics of the disease often also changes, because the pathogens mutate and adapt to the new host. These are facts that are often denied by the reprehensible, criminal and irresponsible men and women in charge. On one hand, they are extremely megalomaniac and narrow-minded, as you have already said, and on the other hand, they remain so restricted in their knowledge, that they fail to see the genuine correlations, or are unable to comprehend them. Now my friend, Edward, we should turn to other things, because we still have many things to discuss. Edward. Of course, I have no further questions.